Okay, so we start with World War II here and the beginning of the war. How did it all get started? World War One was called the War to End All Wars, and that's because it was so devastating that people would be foolish to start another war like that. So how could it happen again? And how could it happen again relatively so quickly? World War One ended in the teens, and 20 years later, we are right back where we started with a war that actually was even more devastating than the first one. And the question is why? And the answer is in really two things. First, we get to our vocabulary word, which is inflation, an economic condition when money loses its value and prices keep rising. The second part of it is reparations, where Germany was ordered to pay back the Allies for all the damage they did. And so when you take these two things together and combine them, it creates a perfect storm. So let me explain. The Germans didn't have all the money to pay back the Allies, so they started printing more money. Also, America was a one of the countries that backed Europe and German goods, gave them loans. They bought German goods, but then we go through the Great Depression, and we need the money, and so we start asking for our money back from these loans, and we stop buying things from Germany because we just can't afford it anymore. And Germany and the rest of Europe go into a worldwide depression. And this is not good for Germany. As you could see here, because they print so much money, when you print more money, the money becomes worthless. It's not worth as much as it was before. And on top of that, they have to do this because they have to pay back the Allies the money that they owe as part of the peace settlement in World War One, and they don't have American money to invest in their own goods so that they keep their economy going, so they could keep making these payments, and everything falls apart very quickly for Germany. And so when you have a company or a country that is so desperate that their economy is in shambles, and France as a punishment for not for stopping these payments because they just couldn't afford them anymore, seizes part of Germany, the Ruhr Valley, which is most of their industry. That basically their most productive areas of Germany are seized by France. And how are they supposed to pay back the money now when they have very little to generate any kind of economy? So the German people become desperate. They're very proud people. They were a rising power. They were doing really well, and World War One seems to have completely unraveled their position in the world, and of course the Great Depression. So the German people begin to turn to a man named Hitler, and Hitler rises to power slowly but surely, manipulating the political system, manipulating people's emotions, and using tactics that well, they're still common today, where they use intimidation, they use lies, they use industries that people believe in. Most notably here in Germany, the military people are very militaristic in Germany, and so he uses all these tactics to gain control and promise the German people that they're going to have better days. And it sounds a lot like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Happy days are here again. But what Hitler does to help speed um, the recovery of Germany is that he seizes money and assets from people that can't protect themselves. Most notably, the Jews. Jews have a lot of property. They have a lot of influence in business and industry. And so when he takes things from them, and we'll talk about the Holocaust later on in this chapter, he's able to use that money and those goods and capital and factories and so forth to help bring Germany out of the doldrums that they're in. So all of these things that brought him to power, all of these things that he needed to bring Germany back so quickly. People thought he was a genius, but really he just stole from people. He tricked people. He manipulated them. A great example is the Reichstag. And let me see if I could find it here. Right here, in 1933, this is what gave him his emergency powers to become the supreme leader. They burned the Reichstag, the government building, the government headquarters, to the ground, and blamed communists, blamed his political opponents. And so they started rounding them up and putting them in jail, and anybody that said, hey, wait a minute, slow down, let's make sure we're doing the right thing, he would throw them in jail. And so people became afraid to speak up and say anything because they would lose their jobs or they'd lose their freedom. And very quickly, Germany succumbed to the Nazi Party and to Hitler. And it's a very cautionary tale that we go through a tough time economically, whatever. The people are so desperate. They become so desperate that they'll listen to anybody that promises them something better if they just give up their freedom, if they just trust this government leader or this dictator and just give them emergency powers, things will be okay. And this is how things get started. And we'll talk about what Hitler does with this power that he gets. But without the inflation, without the economic turmoil, Hitler never gets a chance to become leader. Before all this happened, they rejected him. They threw him in jail. But after all this turmoil, he rises to become the supreme leader of Germany.